Imagine a world where every country owes money. The United States owes trillions. Japan owes even more compared to its economy. Countries across Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America all carry massive national debts. Now here's the strange part. If every country is in debt, who exactly is the creditor? Because logically, debt means someone else must be the lender. But in the modern global financial system, the answer isn't as simple as one country lending to another. Instead, there's a deeper paradox, a financial structure where debt itself has become the foundation of money. And once that system started, the world entered a cycle where debt could never fully disappear. This is the economic paradox keeping every country permanently in debt. To understand this paradox, we need to go back in time. For most of history, money represented something real: gold, silver, physical assets stored in vaults. Governments couldn't simply create money whenever they wanted. Every banknote had to be backed by precious metal reserves. This system limited debt, because if a government wanted to spend more than it had to raise taxes or borrow real money. But everything began to change during the rise of modern central banking in the 20th century, especially after one crucial turning point. In 1971, the global financial system experienced a quiet revolution. The United States ended the gold standard, meaning dollars were no longer tied to gold reserves. Money became fiat currency, money backed not by physical assets, but by government trust and economic output. And that change unlocked something powerful. Governments could now create money through a new mechanism: debt. Here's where the paradox begins. In modern economies, most money is created when banks issue loans. When a bank approves a loan for a business or government, it doesn't usually hand over existing money from a vault. Instead, it creates new money digitally, adding it to the borrower's account. This process is part of what economists call fractional reserve banking. The result? Debt becomes the engine that expands the money supply. No borrowing means no new money entering the system, which means economies depend on continuous borrowing to keep functioning. Governments borrow to fund spending. Businesses borrow to expand. Consumers borrow to buy homes, cars, and education. And every loan increases the amount of money circulating in the economy, but it also increases total debt. After World War II, governments around the world started using debt as a tool for growth. They issued government bonds to fund infrastructure, social programs, and military spending. Investors bought these bonds because they were considered safe. Central banks supported the system by managing interest rates and stabilizing financial markets. At first, this worked extremely well. Debt helped finance highways, universities, hospitals, technology development. Economic growth exploded, but there was a hidden catch. Every government bond represents future repayment with interest, and that interest must be paid with new money entering the system, which usually means new borrowing, so the system quietly created a loop. Old debt gets paid with new debt, and the cycle continues. The problem becomes visible during financial crises. One of the biggest examples happened during the 2008 global financial crisis. Banks collapsed, housing markets crashed, credit markets froze. Suddenly, the entire debt-driven system faced a dangerous problem. If borrowing stopped, money creation would stop too? And without new money entering the economy, economic activity would collapse. Governments responded with massive bailouts and stimulus programs. Central banks printed trillions of dollars through policies like quantitative easing. They bought government bonds and financial assets to inject liquidity into the system. The goal was simple: restart borrowing, restart spending, restart the debt engine. And it worked, but at a cost. Global debt levels exploded. Today, global debt has reached historic levels. According to international financial estimates, global debt exceeds $300 trillion when combining government, corporate, and household debt. That's far larger than the entire global economy. Many countries now carry debt equal to 100% or more of their GDP. Some even exceed 200%. Yet instead of decreasing, debt continues to grow. Why? Because reducing debt too quickly would shrink the money supply and trigger recession. So governments face a difficult choice: cut debt and risk economic collapse, or keep borrowing and push the problem into the future. Most choose the second option. Over the decades, policymakers have tried different solutions. Some countries tried austerity, cutting spending and raising taxes to reduce debt. But austerity often slowed economic growth, making debt harder to repay. Others relied on inflation. When inflation rises, the real value of debt shrinks over time. But inflation also reduces purchasing power for ordinary people. Central banks walk a tightrope, trying to manage inflation without triggering financial instability. And then there's the strategy most commonly used today: simply roll the debt forward. Old bonds mature. Governments issue new bonds to replace them. The debt continues, but the system keeps running. If you look at financial history, the same pattern keeps repeating. Economic expansion fueled by borrowing, rising debt levels, a financial crisis, central bank intervention, more debt to stabilize the system, and then the cycle begins again. During the COVID-19 pandemic, governments worldwide borrowed trillions to support their economies. Central banks injected unprecedented liquidity into financial markets. Debt once again became the tool used to prevent economic collapse, but the paradox remained unchanged. The system requires continuous debt expansion to maintain stability. Here's the strange truth: if every country suddenly paid off its debt tomorrow, the global financial system could face severe contraction, because a large portion of the money supply would disappear. Debt isn't just an obligation in modern economies. It's part of the structure that creates money itself, which means the system cannot function without it. And that's the paradox. The world wants less debt, but the financial system depends on it. First, modern money is deeply connected to borrowing. Loans create new money, meaning economic growth often relies on increasing debt. Second, governments rarely eliminate debt. They manage and roll it forward. The goal is stability, not necessarily full repayment. Third, financial crises often lead to even more borrowing as policymakers try to prevent economic collapse. Debt expands during both good times and bad times. So the next time you hear about rising national debt, consider the deeper question: is debt simply a problem to solve, or is it a structural feature of the modern financial system? Because if the system itself depends on debt, then eliminating it entirely be far more complicated than it appears. If you want to understand the hidden systems shaping global finance, subscribe to the channel, because the biggest financial forces in the world often operate quietly, hidden behind systems most people never question.